Please welcome to the stage Hudson Institute Board of Trustees Chair, Sarah Mae Stern.
Good afternoon, konnichiwa, and welcome. I'm Sarah Stern, the chairman of Hudson Institute. I am both humbled and awed by the opportunity to welcome our distinguished honorees, Prime Minister Abe and my fellow Hudson board member, Mr. Ohashi. I also want to extend a special welcome to Minister for Foreign Affairs, Kishida, Deputy Chief Cabinet Secretary Kato, Ambassador Sase, Deputy Minister for Foreign Affairs Sugiyama, and Consul General Kusaka. Also, please welcome distinguished guests, General Petraeus, Dr. Kissinger, and Senator Lieberman. Another thank you goes to the people who have traveled great distances to be with us today, particularly everyone who traveled from Japan. We are truly honored by your presence. We are also pleased to have everybody who fought the UN week congestion here with us today. It is my great pleasure to welcome and to say thank you for our major supporters. Hosts Henry and Marie-José Kravis, patron A&A Holdings, and our benefactors, the Star Foundation, Bob Dupé, and Alan and Frances Tesler. Your generosity helps the scholars at Hudson whose innovative yet practical research transforms society. My profound gratitude for all that you have done. Yes, we can clap for that. But I also need to say thank you to everybody else whose contributions provide the sustenance that we need at Hudson. Every table at this room is filled with fascinating people, and I saw the list, so that is actually true. So the conversation at the table should be scintillating. But if there is a break, please take time to look at the big screens which show the name of our sponsor-level donors. We are deeply grateful for the support of each and every one of you. Now, my introduction to Japan came in 1976 when I was an exchange student in Naoshi in Ishikawa-ken. I was inspired to go to Japan in part by Herman Kahn's predictions of the emerging Japanese superstate. Therefore, it gives me great personal pleasure to continue the important connection between Japan and Hudson Institute. After the salad course, the program will commence. Leading off will be Ken Weinstein, Hudson's brilliant leader of the scholars and talented CEO. He will tell you a little bit more about the connection between Japan and Hudson. Again, thank you for supporting Hudson and enjoy the great program in front of us. Domo arigatou gozaimasu.
Please welcome to the stage Hudson Institute President and CEO, Dr. Ken Weinstein.
Good afternoon. I am deeply honored and truly privileged to welcome Prime Minister Abe, Deputy Chief Cabinet Secretary Kato, Ambassador Sasai, Deputy Foreign Minister Sugiyama, Consul General Kusaka, and their distinguished colleagues from Japan. I'd like to acknowledge and thank the incredible and dedicated Hudson Institute leadership team. I am deeply grateful to work every day with our chair, Sarah Stern, Chairman Emeritus Wally Stern, Vice Chair Marie-José Kravis, and our other trustees, especially Yoji Ohashi, whom we honor today. We are fortunate to continue the Herman Kahn tradition by having Herman's daughter, Trustee Debbie Kahn Cunningham, with us this afternoon, and granddaughter Jessie Cunningham. And I'd like especially to welcome the great researchers who are the heart of this special organization. In addition, I owe deep gratitude and a warm welcome to all of you, the friends and guests of Hudson Institute. I thank you deeply for your support and for joining us today. Now, this is a special year for the Kahn Award. 2013 marks a sad anniversary. 30 years since the sudden death of Herman Kahn, Hudson's founder. But the year also marks a real break with tradition. All our past honorees have been Americans, 3 of whom are with us, each a giant in foreign and defense policy: Henry Kissinger, David Petraeus, and Joe Lieberman. Thank you, gentlemen, for your extraordinary leadership. Now let me begin with a few words about our co-honoree, Yoji Ohashi, the chairman of ANA Holdings Incorporated. Ohashi-san, you are a pioneer in the airline industry, a man whose hard work, dedication to innovation, and unparalleled attention to customer service transformed ANA into Japan's best airline. But you didn't stop there. As president and CEO and then chairman, your foresight and global vision helped turn ANA into a worldwide transportation leader, one of the most recognized brands in travel. You are deeply concerned about national and global affairs, which is why you've helped lead critical policy organizations. As president of the Asian Forum Japan think tank in Tokyo, as vice chair of the Keidanren, Japanese Business Federation, and as a trustee of Hudson Institute. And it is why men like our Kahn honoree, your friend, Prime Minister Abe, rely on your advice and insight. As you are the consummate team player, I know you will be accepting this award on behalf of ANA as a whole. So please allow me to salute the remarkable team you built in Tokyo to establish what is the gold standard in commercial aviation. Chairman Ohashi, you're standing. I would like to ask the audience to kindly acknowledge you. I salute you, Ohashi-san, for all you have done for ANA, for Japan, for the U.S.-Japan Alliance, and for Hudson Institute. And let me salute you also for one other thing. You're obviously not from Washington. You're the first honoree in Hudson history to decline an opportunity to grab the microphone. And I think all of us owe you a deep debt of gratitude. Now, Prime Minister Abe, you have a great many friends in this room. Not the kind, of course, who forgot they were your friends, say, from 2008 to 2012, only to remember as you became the most popular leader in the free world how much they always deeply liked you. Fair weather friendship is not the Hudson way. You and I have enjoyed an excellent and productive working relationship for more than a decade, which I deeply value. I've asked another old Hudson friend to introduce you, and he will do so in a moment. As you know, the Institute's Senior Vice President, Scooter Libby, is an old Japan hand who played a critical role in assuring the primacy of the U.S.-Japan alliance. Back in 1983, when Scooter was an aide in the State Department, and when I was, well, a junior in college, sorry, pal, Scooter drafted an address for another Hudson honoree, Ronald Reagan, President Ronald Reagan, who spoke to the Diet and made the moral argument for a strong U.S.-Japan alliance against the Soviets, thereby renewing the critical partnership between our two nations. Now you, Mr. Prime Minister, have addressed us at Hudson on many occasions in the past. No less an expert than your own guy in Washington, Ambassador Sasai, tells me that your Hudson speeches foreshadow the policies you pursue. In 2006, at a conference in Tokyo, you called for an enhanced U.S.-Japan-Indian trilateral alliance, which later became central to your vision as Prime Minister less than a year later. And in 2010 in Washington, you called for strengthened Japanese alliances in Asia and for a real focus on economic reform, policies which you are now vigorously pursuing. Your strategic vision is bringing much-needed change, improving Japan's economic performance, restoring confidence, enhancing Japan's defenses and the U.S.-Japan alliance, and allowing you to emerge as the strongest leader among America's allies. For all these reasons, we are honored to present you the Herman Kahn Award. Now, what exactly does this award symbolize? More than 5 decades after its founding, Herman Kahn's vision continues to guide Hudson Institute. Born in 1922, Herman was a character, a lovable, disheveled giant, a mathematical physicist with voracious physical and intellectual appetites, and one of the world's most noted public intellectuals. In America and in Europe, Kahn became known for meeting the great challenge of preventing nuclear escalation. Operating at the intersection of grand strategy, technology, and economics, Kahn revolutionized deterrence and game theory, pioneered civil defense, and the use of scenario planning in international affairs. He loved the study of history, and he knew that history throws curves. Sometimes, he noted, entire nations rise and fall on the choices they make, standing before the forces of their time. Through his scenario work, Kahn became the first Western observer to predict the rise of Japan, and by far the most famous to do so. In 1962, while analyzing East Asian security for the Pentagon, Kahn observed that Japan's growth, then at 10% of GDP annually, would continue, and that Japan would become the world's second largest economy. Kahn, the famous nuclear strategist, suddenly turned his mind to Japan, devouring all he could in the way of history, culture, and business practices to understand why Japan and eventually the other Asian tigers were on the ascent. Kahn's foresight brought optimism and confidence to a nation still unsure of itself. He soon grew to love Japan, its people and culture, and traveled there regularly, briefing prime ministers, cabinet officials, and leading executives. The people of Japan, in turn, grew to love this towering intellect, which came packaged in a somewhat familiar form, the body of a sumo wrestler. Kahn's great book on Japan, The Emerging Japanese Superstate, was groundbreaking and a runaway bestseller. But Kahn was no Pollyanna. He spoke truth to power. The first Western observer to predict the rise of Japan was among the first to call for something dear to Prime Minister Abe's heart: structural economic reform, which Kahn championed nearly 3.5 decades ago in the Japanese Challenge, published in 1979. Kahn's vision remains vibrant today, and Hudson remains committed to cutting-edge research that advances security, prosperity, and freedom. And Hudson recognizes the need for engaged American global leadership in partnership with our democratic allies, especially Japan. As in Kahn's time, we are dedicated to rigorous inquiry, in-depth analysis, rooted in asking the tough questions. This Hudson ethic runs from our work in economics, which includes trade, regulation, innovation, healthcare, housing, and financial markets, to our work on philanthropy, civil society, and international religious freedom. Hudson's defense and foreign policy work is truly global, but it has a special focus on Asia, and this is what we see. The economically vibrant and democratic Japan that Kahn foresaw has been a cornerstone of U.S. security strategy in the Asia-Pacific, a strategy that over the past 3 decades has paved the way for the emergence of key democratic nations and U.S. allies, including Taiwan and South Korea. It has also enabled one of the great transformations of history, as the people of China, 1/5 of the world's population, have benefited from rapidly expanding commerce and prosperity across Asia. Today, as some in Beijing and elsewhere challenge the commercial and political order that made Asia's rise possible, Hudson looks to the future and sees the U.S.-Japan alliance as central. American armed forces are stretched increasingly thin, with the U.S. Navy smaller than at any point since the end of the Cold War, requiring increased cooperation between the U.S. and its Asian allies especially Australia, South Korea, and Japan. The U.S.-Japan alliance is critical to these efforts, particularly as we deepen strategic ties with Asia's other democracies, notably India, and seek opportunities in emerging countries like Burma and Vietnam. Now, much in the Asia-Pacific region depends on Central Asia and the Middle East, and a core focus of Hudson research is on dynamics across the rest of Eurasia, from Pakistan to Turkey, Egypt to Iran, and how these connect to the Asia-Pacific. If Herman were alive today, he would see that the organization he founded remains distinctly international, unconventional, bold, and ahead of the curve. He would be pleased that Japan remains a key research focus and that the long-standing ties he forged in Japan continue to this day. Kahn might even hypothesize that if Abenomics gets things right, then Japan should maintain its technologic and strategic advantage in Asia. In fact, it is not inconceivable, as some of my colleagues argue, that given the current economic trajectory of China, with the proper reforms in Abenomics' famed third arrow, Japan could once again become the world's second largest economy. So stay tuned. Mr. Prime Minister, we are deeply honored that you've relied upon our research in the past, that you're with us today, and all of us look forward to hearing from you shortly. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming. Extend a particular welcome to Prime Minister Abe, Foreign Minister Kishida, and Ambassador Sasai. It's a pleasure to have you with us again. Also welcome and recognize Hudson Chair Sarah Stern, Chairman Emeritus Wally Stern, Vice Chair Marie-José Cravas, and the rest of the Board of Trustees, including particularly our honoree, Ohashi-san. Ken, thank you very much for that rather pointed introduction. I hadn't realized until today just how many years you must have spent in college. May I also extend greetings to four men whom I came to admire greatly during my White House days: General David Petraeus, Henry Kravis, Senator Joe Lieberman, and my old friend, Secretary Kissinger. He always brought to the White House tremendous insight, and he came a lot. Exactly 30 years ago this fall, President Ronald Reagan traveled to Japan to address the Diet. The Prime Minister then was Nakasone. The Foreign Minister was Abe Shintaro, our honoree's father. Standing in the Diet that day, President Reagan quoted an old Japanese proverb: "A single arrow is easily broken, but not three in a bunch." Now, on the plane to Japan 30 years ago, a worried White House speechwriter said, "Mr. President, that three arrows language might be a little too militaristic. Maybe we should take it out." But President Reagan said, "Well, you know that young fellow, Abe Shinzo? I think he's going to be Prime Minister one day." Maybe even twice. And I want the world to know that I strongly support what Prime Minister Abe is trying to do. So you leave those three arrows right where they are. Now, Ronald Reagan was a smart man, but he failed to note that before becoming Prime Minister, Abe Shinzo would serve his country in a number of roles: as a longtime member of the Diet, as a skilled negotiator on the terrible tragedy of the Japanese abductees, as Chief Cabinet Secretary for Prime Minister Koizumi, and as a strategist, looking to the future of Japan and of the Asia-Pacific region. In all of these roles, Prime Minister Abe has been a good friend to the U.S. and a believer in the importance of strong ties between our countries. A moment ago, I mentioned three strong leaders, Prime Ministers Nakasone and Koizumi, and Foreign Minister Abe Shintaro. I did so in part because Japanese-American relations have always been strongest when Japan has strong leaders. And the Japanese people seem to agree. For they have given Prime Minister Abe an important opportunity for both of our countries. In his speech to the Diet 30 years ago, President Reagan praised the qualities of hard work and imagination that make Japan and America so much alike. President Reagan praised economic reforms that stimulate competition, reward initiative, and free the power of markets. And he criticized protectionism. President Reagan would strongly support Prime Minister Abe's determination to seek market reforms and enter the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement process. Now, some of you may remember that the American economy wasn't doing so well 30 years ago. Our economy seemed permanently stuck in neutral, and many people said it couldn't be fixed. But President Reagan led the way to turn that around. He even told the Diet, "We're correcting past mistakes. Hope is being reborn. Confidence is returning. America's future looks bright again." Now, that same Reagan speechwriter said to the president, "Mr. President, maybe you should say to the Diet, America is back." No, Reagan said, "I'm not quite sure I have the body for a line like that." But that's what great leaders do. They lift their countries, they give them new energy, and they bring out the greatness within them. And that is what Prime Minister Abe has set out to do. Near the end of his Diet address, Reagan said that a partnership must be a two-way street, grounded in mutual trust. And President Reagan placed great trust in Japan. He welcomed what he called Japan's, quote, proud history of nationhood and democracy. He said, "Of all the strengths we possess, of all the ties that bind us, I believe the greatest is our dedication to freedom." It was in this spirit that President Reagan praised our Mutual Security Treaty, a treaty championed by Kishi Nobusuke, the Prime Minister's grandfather. President Reagan raised security because, as he warned the Diet, we live in uncertain times. And he made it clear that there are trials and tests for freedom wherever freedom stands. He warned the Diet of dangers in areas around Japan. He warned of, quote, crude attempts to intimidate freedom-loving people. He spoke of the stonewalling of our adversaries at the negotiating table. And he spoke of terror attacks in the Islamic world. It was in the context of these opposing forces, the dangers of terrorism and non-democratic states, and the common values and trust between the U.S. and Japan, that President Reagan raised his three arrows. He believed that nations who cherish peace must invest to secure it. And so he greatly increased America's defense spending. But President Reagan also believed in collective defense. Japan will not have to bear the burden of defending freedom alone, he said. We will bear the burden together. 30 years ago, Ronald Reagan trusted and welcomed Japan as a partner in Pacific security. In 30 years, democracy and the love of peace in Japan have only deepened. Japan will reach its own democratic decisions on defense matters. But Ronald Reagan welcomed Japan's help then. He would welcome it now. He would welcome a strong, capable Japan, and he would see in Prime Minister Abe Shinzo a kindred spirit. There is in Japan a wooden shrine built 1,500 years ago that never decays. It never decays because every generation it is rebuilt anew. The rebuilding begins with a single post, roughly 2 meters tall, and the new shrine is built around that post. It is called the Shinno Mihashira, and it means column of the heart. In that post lies an echo of ancient Japan. The US-Japanese relationship is like that shrine, rebuilt by each generation. No one exemplifies that better than our honoree. He rebuilt himself so he could rebuild Japan, and so he could build for a new generation what his father and grandfather started before. So I'm pleased to present the Hudson Institute's 2013 Herman Kahn Award to Prime Minister Abe Shinzo. It bears the inscription, a transformative leader and a dedicated friend of the United States. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Prime Minister Abe Shinzo.
Thank you, Scooter, Ken, my friends, Chairman Stern. I'm flattered. Thank you so much. President Reagan received this award. So did Vice President Cheney, Secretaries Kissinger and Schultz, and the list goes on and on. And today, you have made me its first non-American awardee. I cannot thank you more. Thank you very much. Herman Kahn predicted Japan's rise early in the 1960s. If he were still alive and saw Japan today, what would he say? Would he say that the Japanese have again become like sunflowers, always looking toward the sun? I do hope so, because by reinvigorating the Japanese economy, I'm also hoping to bring back a sense of optimism for the future to the people of Japan. This is why we all rejoice so much at the decision that the Olympics in 2020 should come to Japan, come to Tokyo. Ladies and gentlemen, a prolonged slump has downsized the Japanese economy. The amount lost is even bigger than the economy of Argentina. More and more young people were starting to give up hope. A majority of the Japanese had begun to expect that tomorrow they would be worse off than today. Were Japan a small country, it would not have mattered much. But it is not. the Japanese economy is still larger than Germany and UK combined. In Japan, very few have served as prime minister twice. But the economic straits was so dire that the voters chose me once again. So my first and foremost priority is to restore the economy in order to drastically change the inward-looking mindset of the Japanese and to encourage them to be bold, taking risks. My so-called first arrow called for a monetary policy untested until now. Second, to strike a right balance between fiscal consolidation and enhancing growth. My second arrow was about flexible fiscal policy. And the third arrow, which we are shooting now, wants you, Uncle Sam, because it will make Japan more open to foreign investment. I now have to deliver with you, your investment, with your expertise, and with your commitment to the future of Japan, a country that will be like a city shining upon a hill with free ports, humming with commerce and creativity, to go on sounding Reagan-esque. It is my belief that Japan and the US together should lead the Indo-Pacific century to make it one that cherishes freedom, democracy, human rights, and rules-based order, with the TPP as its backbone. That is why I have decided that Japan must enter into the negotiations for the trade framework. And today, I am pleased to be telling you that my three arrows are bringing concrete results. Thank you. Last year, in the third quarter, Japan's economy shrunk by 3.6%. But under my new policies this year, in the first quarter, Japan's economy grew by 4.1%. In the second quarter, 3.8%. Now, let me turn to the issues of national security. The question is this: is Japan up to its task in this world, where threats see no borders? Let me give you a picture. First, at the site of a UN peacekeeping operation, Japanese troops are operating alongside another military from country X. Suddenly, the X force is under attack. They ask for help to the Japanese stationed nearby. But the Japanese troops cannot help because it is unconstitutional to do so under the current interpretation of the Japanese Constitution. Take another example, this one on the high seas. The US Aegis ships are deployed around Japan in cooperation with Japanese Aegis ships against potential missile launch. They are concentrating their capabilities on the missile defense, leaving themselves weaker to air-to-sea attacks. Now, all of a sudden, one of the Aegis ships is attacked by an airplane. Again, the Japanese ships, no matter how capable, cannot help the US ship because to do so will constitute an act of collective defense, which is unconstitutional under the current interpretation of the Japanese Constitution. Those are questions we are seriously considering how to address. In this age, everything is connected. Nothing lies outside the network. Outer space has no borders. Chemical weapons transcend borders. My country cannot be the weak link in the chain. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm working hard to rebuild Japan's economy, while at the same time working hard to reinvent our national security structure. For the first time ever, Japan will establish its National Security Council. For the first time ever, we will publish a national security strategy in which we will state what Japan is committed to and what our aims are. Also, for the first time in 11 years, my government has increased its defense budget this year. By how much? You may want to know. Before that, we have an immediate neighbor whose military expenditure is at least twice as large as Japan's, and second only to the US defense budget. The country has increased its military expenditures, hardly transparent, by more than 10% annually for more than 20 years, since 1989. And then my government has increased its defense budget only by 0.8%. So call me, if you want, a right-wing militarist. Now, to sum up, Japan should not be the weak link in the region, in the regional and global security framework where the US plays a leading role. Japan is one of the world's most mature democracies. Thus, we must be a net contributor to the provision of the world's welfare and security, and we will. Japan will contribute to the peace and stability of the region and the world, even more proactively than before. I'm determined, ladies and gentlemen, to make my beloved country a proactive contributor to peace. I'm now aware that my historical role should be to revitalize the nation and encourage the people to be more forthcoming, thereby leading them to become a proud bearer of the banner for a proactive contributor to peace. I now know why you gave me this award. It is quintessentially Kahnesque, isn't it? To encourage the receiver by predicting his future on his behalf. Thank you very much.
Mr. Prime Minister, thank you for those extraordinary remarks. My colleagues and I look forward to working with you in your task to revitalize Japan. This remarkable afternoon is about to come to a conclusion. I want to thank everyone here, especially those who have traveled great distances, for coming, for your support. We look forward to seeing you at future Hudson Institute events. And I also want to thank the incredible Hudson Institute events team for pulling this all together. Thank you very much. See you all soon.